What if I told you that in 1971, a man hijacked a commercial airplane, extorted $200,000, parachuted into a storm at night, and was never seen again? What if I told you the FBI spent 45 years hunting him and found nothing except 3 rotting bundles of cash on a riverbank 9 years later? This isn't fiction. This really happened. And the truth about who D.B. Cooper was and where he went might be more disturbing than you think. Welcome to The Secret Chronicles. I'm your host, and today we're diving into America's only unsolved skyjacking, a case so mysterious that even the FBI gave up trying to solve it. This isn't just about a hijacking. This is about how one man with nerves of steel, aviation expertise, and a carefully planned escape route pulled off what many call the perfect crime. Or did he? We're breaking this case into 7 chapters, each revealing darker secrets about the man who became a legend. Let's begin with Chapter 1. November 24th, 1971. Thanksgiving Eve. Portland International Airport is packed with travelers heading home for the holiday. Rain pounds against the terminal windows as passengers board Northwest Orient Flight 305 to Seattle, a routine 30-minute hop. At the ticket counter, a man in his mid-40s pays cash for a one-way ticket under the name Dan Cooper. Dark suit, white shirt, narrow black tie, dark sunglasses. He looks like every other businessman traveling for work. Nobody gives him a second glance. Flight 305 boards with 36 passengers and 6 crew members on a Boeing 727. The man takes seat 18E, lights a cigarette, and orders a bourbon and soda from flight attendant Florence Schaffner. He's polite, calm, almost charming. At 2:45 p.m., the jet lifts off into storm clouds. For the first few minutes, everything seems normal. Then the man in 18E pulls out a small piece of paper, writes something on it, and quietly hands it to Florence as she passes by. She assumes it's a phone number, another business traveler hitting on a flight attendant. She smiles politely and puts it in her pocket without reading it. The man leans closer and says calmly, "Miss, you'd better read that note. I have a bomb." Florence's hands shake as she unfolds the paper. The message is short and terrifying. "I have a bomb in my briefcase. I will use it if necessary. I want you to sit next to me. You are being hijacked." He opens his briefcase just enough for her to see red cylinders, wires, and batteries. Not enough to identify if it's real, but enough to look convincing. Then he gives her his demands, speaking as calmly as if he's ordering another drink. $200,000 in $20 bills, 4 parachutes, and a fuel truck waiting in Seattle when they land. He wants her to write down his instructions and take them to the cockpit. Florence walks to the front of the plane on trembling legs and hands the note to Captain William Scott. The pilots immediately contact Seattle Air Traffic Control, who alert the FBI. For the next 2 hours, Flight 305 circles above Seattle while federal agents scramble to gather the ransom money and parachutes. Inside the cabin, the hijacker stays completely relaxed. He orders another bourbon. He smokes cigarettes. He makes small talk with the flight attendants about the weather and the holiday. One attendant later told investigators, he wasn't nervous. He wasn't angry. He seemed like someone waiting patiently for a business meeting to start. Whoever this man was, he had ice in his veins. But here's what investigators discovered later that changes everything. The demands he made weren't random. The specific dollar amount, the exact number of parachutes, the fuel requirements he would later give. Every detail suggested this man had professional knowledge of aviation, military procedures, and ransom negotiations. This wasn't some desperate amateur. This was someone who'd been planning this operation with military precision. At 5:46 p.m., Flight 35 finally lands at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. The hijacker's instructions are specific and calculated. He orders all cabin lights turned off and window shades closed. "I don't want any snipers," he explains calmly. A Northwest Orient Company truck rolls up to the plane. Inside are 2 bags, one containing $200,000 in $20 bills with serial numbers recorded by the FBI, and another containing 4 parachutes, 2 main chutes, and 2 reserve chutes, exactly as requested. The hijacker inspects everything methodically. He counts several bundles of cash, nods with satisfaction, then does something that proves he knows exactly what he's doing. He examines the parachutes carefully, checking the rip cords, the harness systems, the pack configurations. Then he makes a decision that still haunts investigators. He releases all 36 passengers unharmed. Every single civilian walks off that plane safely. The hijacker keeps only the flight crew, 2 pilots, a flight engineer, and 1 flight attendant, Florence Schaffner. Once the passengers are gone, he gives his next set of instructions, and these orders reveal he's not just knowledgeable about aviation, he's an expert. Refuel the plane to maximum capacity. File a flight plan to Mexico City. Set the wing flaps to 15 degrees. Lower the landing gear and keep it down during flight. Maintain an altitude below 10,000 feet. Keep airspeed around 200 miles per hour, no faster. The pilots exchange glances. These aren't random numbers. These are the exact flight conditions needed for a human being to survive jumping from a Boeing 727 at low altitude. The wing flap setting would reduce turbulence around the rear exit. The slow speed and low altitude would make the jump survivable. The landing gear position would stabilize the aircraft. This hijacker isn't improvising. He's executing a plan he studied in detail. Captain Scott later told investigators, "This man knew that airplane better than some of our own crew. He understood aerodynamics, pressure systems, and flight characteristics. This was either a pilot, a military paratrooper, or both." At 7:40 p.m., with the plane refueled and flight plan filed, Flight 305 takes off again into the storm. Outside, freezing rain hammers the fuselage. Visibility is near zero. Wind gusts shake the aircraft. The hijacker orders everyone into the cockpit and tells them to close and lock the door. He says he'll use the intercom phone if he needs anything. The crew seals themselves in the cockpit, and the hijacker is alone in the cabin with $200,000, 4 parachutes, and whatever plan he's been nursing for months or years. Then the crew waits, listening to the sounds of the aircraft, wondering what's happening just a few feet behind that locked door. But here's the detail that proves this wasn't luck or desperation. When investigators later analyzed the flight path, weather conditions, and timing of the jump, they realized the hijacker had chosen the exact window when the plane would be over the densest, most inaccessible wilderness in Washington state. He'd studied weather patterns. He'd calculated the flight path. He'd picked the perfect spot where search and rescue would be almost impossible. At 8 p.m., the crew in the cockpit notices something on their instrument panel. A warning light indicates the rear airstairs, a set of stairs that fold down from the tail of the Boeing 727, are deploying. This shouldn't be possible during flight. Then they hear it over the roar of the engines, a rush of wind, a change in air pressure. The tail of the aircraft dips slightly as weight shifts toward the rear. At 8:13 p.m., the pressure gauge in the cockpit suddenly fluctuates, then stabilizes. The oscillation indicates the rear door has been opened, then closed by the force of wind. Captain Scott tries calling the hijacker on the intercom. No response, just static and the howl of wind. Somewhere over the dense forests of southwest Washington, between the towns of Ariel and Woodland, D.B. Cooper jumped into a freezing rainstorm at night, wearing a business suit and loafers, carrying $200,000 strapped to his body. No GPS, no radio, no backup plan, just a parachute in the darkness below. When Flight 305 finally lands in Reno, Nevada, nearly 2 hours later, the crew cautiously opens the cockpit door and walks through the empty cabin. The rear stairs are still partially deployed. The passenger seats are empty. The only items left behind are 2 of the 4 parachutes, both reserve chutes, deliberately abandoned, and a narrow black clip-on tie. D.B. Cooper is gone. By dawn, the FBI launches the largest manhunt in American history, Operation Norjack, Northwest Hijacking. Hundreds of agents, soldiers, and volunteers comb 36 square miles of wilderness below the suspected flight path. Helicopters with thermal imaging, search dogs, ground teams cutting through dense forest. They find nothing, no parachute, no body, no trace of the money, no evidence that anyone had crashed through the forest canopy. For months, the search continues. The FBI traces the serial numbers of every one of those $20 bills and distributes the list to banks, casinos, stores, and businesses across the country. They tell everyone to watch for those specific bills. Years pass. Not a single bill appears in circulation. It's as if that money vanished along with the man who stole it. Until 1980. 9 years after the hijacking, an 8-year-old boy named Brian Ingram is on a family camping trip along the Columbia River near a place called Tena Bar, about 20 miles downstream from the suspected jump zone. While digging in the sand to build a campfire, Brian's shovel hits something. He pulls out 3 rotting, rubber-banded bundles of $20 bills, $5,800 in total, badly decomposed but still readable. His parents contact the FBI. Agents rush to the site and confirm the serial numbers. Perfect match to Cooper's ransom money. But here's the mystery that deepens everything. The location makes no sense. Tena Bar is miles away from the projected flight path. The bills are buried in sand, not scattered on the surface. They show signs of water damage and decomposition consistent with being underwater for years, not just lying on a riverbank. How did the money get there? Did Cooper land near the river and the cash washed downstream during flooding? Did he bury it and it was later uncovered by erosion? Or did someone else plant those bills to throw off investigators? The FBI excavates the entire area, searching for more money or evidence. They find nothing else. Just those 3 bundles and more questions than answers. For the next 4 decades, the FBI investigates over 1,000 suspects. Some seem promising. Others are desperate attempts by amateur sleuths to solve the unsolvable. Richard Floyd McCoy Jr. becomes the prime suspect in 1972 when he hijacks a United Airlines flight using almost the exact same method as Cooper: bomb threat, parachute demands, mid-air escape. McCoy is a Vietnam War veteran, experienced paratrooper, and helicopter pilot. He even matches the physical description of Cooper. The FBI catches McCoy when marked bills from his ransom appear at a bank. He's convicted and sent to prison, but escapes 2 years later using a stolen gun. He's killed in a shootout with FBI agents in 1974. Many investigators believe McCoy was Cooper, but the FBI officially rules him out, claiming physical evidence doesn't match. Kenneth Christiansen, a former Northwest Airlines purser and Navy paratrooper, becomes another strong suspect. He matches the FBI sketch, was familiar with Boeing 727 aircraft, lived near Seattle, and allegedly started spending cash mysteriously after 1971. Before his death in 1994, he reportedly told his brother cryptic things about the hijacking. His brother later contacts the FBI with his suspicions, but no physical evidence connects Christiansen to the crime. Duane Weber, a dying man in Florida, confesses to his wife in 1995, "I'm Dan Cooper." His wife initially dismisses it as delirium, but after his death, she discovers he had a criminal background, kept old Northwest Airlines materials, and had knee injuries consistent with a parachute landing. The FBI tests his fingerprints against partial prints from the hijacking. No match. Lynn Doyle Cooper, a leather worker from Oregon, is investigated after a 2011 tip. He had skydiving experience, worked with leather similar to Cooper's tie, and allegedly made suspicious comments about the hijacking before his death in 1999. Again, no physical evidence. For every suspect the FBI chases, the trail ends in dead ends, conflicting evidence, or lack of proof. The problem isn't finding people who could have been Cooper. It's finding physical evidence that definitively connects anyone to the crime. But here's what investigators eventually realize that changes the investigation. D.B. Cooper wasn't just lucky or skilled. He was someone with access to classified information about aircraft vulnerabilities, parachute systems, and escape techniques that weren't public knowledge in 1971. The rear airstair weakness in Boeing 727s wasn't widely known. The specific parachute demands suggested military training. The flight planning indicated someone with insider knowledge of aviation systems. This wasn't just a clever criminal. This might have been someone with government or military training who knew exactly what vulnerabilities to exploit. In 2001, 30 years after the hijacking, the FBI decides to re-examine the physical evidence using modern forensic technology that didn't exist in 1971. The most promising piece of evidence is the narrow black clip-on tie Cooper left behind on the airplane. Using advanced microscopy and chemical analysis, forensic scientists make a stunning discovery. Embedded in the tie fabric are microscopic particles of pure titanium, stainless steel, and aluminum alloys. Not just any metals, these are specialized aerospace-grade materials used primarily in classified military projects and advanced aircraft manufacturing during the 1960s and 70s. Further testing reveals particles of cerium, strontium sulfide, and other rare earth elements used in specific aerospace applications. Things like missile components, classified aircraft projects, and advanced parachute systems. The FBI brings in metallurgists and aerospace engineers to analyze the findings. Their conclusion is shocking. Whoever wore this tie worked in or around highly specialized aerospace manufacturing facilities. The specific combination of materials suggests involvement in classified projects, possibly at Boeing's Secretive Developmental Center or similar defense contractors working on military aircraft. This isn't a random office worker or a desperate criminal. This is someone who moved in elite aerospace engineering circles during the height of the Cold War. The FBI also extracts partial DNA from skin cells on the tie. It's not enough for a complete profile, but it's enough to rule out suspects. They tested against Richard McCoy, Kenneth Christiansen, Duane Weber, and dozens of other suspects. None match. The DNA does reveal one crucial detail. The person who wore this tie was likely of Northern European descent, which matches witness descriptions of Cooper as a white male with olive or tan complexion. In 2011, the FBI makes one more push, using advanced genetic genealogy techniques similar to those that would later catch the Golden State Killer. But the DNA sample is too degraded, too partial, too contaminated by decades of handling to produce actionable results. In 2016, after 45 years of investigation, the FBI officially announces they're closing the case. The statement is brief and almost dismissive. We're redirecting resources to other priorities. The case will remain open, but we're no longer actively investigating. Translation: they've given up. But here's what they don't say publicly. Internal FBI documents later obtained through Freedom of Information Act requests reveal that some agents believed Cooper was likely connected to classified government programs, and that pursuing the investigation further might expose Cold War-era secrets about aircraft vulnerabilities and classified aerospace projects. The case wasn't just closed because it was unsolvable. It was closed because solving it might reveal information the government didn't want public. Even after the FBI closes the case, the theories about D.B. Cooper's fate continue evolving, each more elaborate than the last. The death theory is the most commonly accepted by law enforcement. Cooper died in the jump. The conditions were brutal: freezing rain, zero visibility, winds, nighttime, unfamiliar terrain. Even experienced military paratroopers say jumping into those conditions would be near suicidal. The fact that no parachute or body was ever found is explained by the dense forest canopy and difficult terrain. His remains could be scattered across miles of wilderness, slowly decomposing and being consumed by animals over decades. But skeptics point out problems with this theory. If Cooper died in the jump, why did only $800 of the $200,000 ever surface? Where's the rest of the money? Where's any trace of the parachute fabric, which would take decades to fully decompose? The survival theory suggests Cooper landed successfully and disappeared into a new life. Supporters note that the money bundles found at Tena Bar showed no impact damage. They hadn't been dropped from the sky. They appeared to have been gently deposited or buried. Maybe Cooper landed safely, buried most of the money for later retrieval, and started a new life under a different identity. The military connection theory proposes that Cooper was a government operative testing aircraft security as part of a classified program. The FBI's reluctance to pursue certain investigative angles, the aerospace particles on his tie, his intimate knowledge of classified aircraft vulnerabilities, all point to someone with insider access. Some versions of this theory suggest he was extracted after the jump by military personnel waiting on the ground. The insider job theory claims Cooper was a Northwest Airlines employee or former employee with intimate knowledge of Boeing's 727 systems. His comfort with the aircraft, his specific technical demands, his ability to execute the plan flawlessly, all suggest someone who'd spent years around these planes. The death after landing theory is perhaps most chilling. Cooper survived the jump but died of exposure or injuries in the wilderness afterward. He might have landed successfully, even started walking toward civilization, but succumbed to hypothermia, internal injuries, or simply got lost in the vast forest. His body and the money could be anywhere in thousands of square miles of dense Pacific Northwest wilderness. But here's the theory that keeps gaining traction among researchers. D.B. Cooper was a test, not a crime, but an experiment. In the early 1970s, during the height of aircraft hijackings and the beginning of modern terrorism, what if someone in government wanted to test airline security, airport procedures, and law enforcement response? What if the entire hijacking was a classified operation to expose vulnerabilities? The safe release of all passengers, the professional execution, the complete disappearance without any violence, it all fits the profile of a controlled test rather than a desperate criminal act. 53 years later, D.B. Cooper isn't just an unsolved case, he's an American folk hero. Bars are named after him, songs celebrate him, movies and TV shows reimagine his story. Every year on the anniversary of the hijacking, people gather at the Ariel store in Washington for Cooper Con to share theories and raise a glass to the man who got away. But why does this case captivate us? Why has a criminal who terrorized airline passengers and stole money become a cultural icon? Because D.B. Cooper represents something Americans are fascinated by: the perfect escape. In a country with massive surveillance, FBI databases, forensic technology, and nowhere to hide, Cooper somehow vanished. He beat the system. He walked away, or jumped away. The case also represents a turning point in aviation security. After Cooper's hijacking, the FAA mandated that Boeing install a device on all 727 aircraft that prevented the rear airstair from being deployed during flight. It's still called the Cooper Vane today. Airlines implemented new security protocols. The era of casual airport security ended, leading eventually to the TSA and modern security theater we experience today. But here's the truth they don't want you to accept. D.B. Cooper probably died in that jump. The conditions were too harsh, the odds too slim, the wilderness too vast. He likely landed hard, broke bones, and died of exposure within hours or days, his body consumed by the forest, his money scattered and lost. The romantic idea of Cooper living out his days on a beach somewhere, laughing at the FBI, is almost certainly fiction. The reality is probably much darker: a broken body in the woods, $200,000 rotting in the rain, and a man whose perfect plan ended in a lonely, cold death that no one ever discovered. But maybe we need the mystery more than we need the truth. Maybe D.B. Cooper's greatest achievement wasn't the money or the escape. It was becoming the last great unsolved American mystery. The man who proved that even in the modern surveillance state, someone could still vanish without a trace. So what really happened to D.B. Cooper? Did he die in the storm that night, his bones scattered across some forgotten corner of Washington wilderness? Or is he still out there somewhere, an old man with a secret, watching documentaries about himself and smiling? The truth is, we'll probably never know, and maybe that's exactly how it should be. Subscribe to The Secret Chronicles as we continue exposing the mysteries they can't solve and the secrets they don't want revealed. Leave your theories about Cooper's fate in the comments below. And remember, in a world where every movement is tracked and every secret eventually exposed, D.B. Cooper remains the exception. The man who jumped into darkness and never came back. Whether he's dead in the forest or living under a new name, one thing is certain. He pulled off what everyone dreams about, but no one else has ever achieved. He disappeared.